Okay, so now we're going to have a look at one of the key elements in C++ called classes. Now, everything in C++ is associated with classes and objects, and it has its own attributes and methods, right? So now everything you take, say in real life, anything you take has attributes and functions. So car has things like color, weight, brand, but it also has functionality like brakes, acceleration, and stuff like that, right? So the easiest way to define a class is a class can be defined as a user-defined data type that can be used in our program. And it's a blueprint for objects. Now that might sound weird, right? But let's get into it. So how do you create a class? So to create a class, what you do is you use something called the class keyword, right? And then you give it a name. So here the name of the class is student, and we used a keyword called class to create the class. Now we have something called access specifiers. I'll go deep into it later, but for now just leave it as it is, right? So now we have something called int id, so the id of the student, the name of the student, and the marks of the student, right? We have a method which is called print details, which is going to print out everything about the student. So you have the ID, the name, and the marks, everything that you saw over there, right? So now what we've done is we basically have a blueprint. So every student has ID, name, and marks, and they will also tell you everything if you ask them, which is print details. So now let's have a look at this, shall we? So let's create an object, right? Student obj. So now here, this is called an object. We're creating an object or an instance of student which follows the blueprint which is given under student. So now the obj here has a distinct ID, a distinct name, and distinct marks. You can also access this print details, right? So now let's probably just keep this as let's convert this to a public thing, right? So I'll explain what that is in future videos for you guys, right? So now everything's public, right? So if you want to access this, right? So you can say obj dot on ID is 1, right? I can say obj dot name is pranav. I can also say obj dot marks is equal to 50. Cool, right? So now if I were to call obj dot print details right now, I'd be calling this function. So let's build this. Okay, so I missed a semicolon somewhere. Here you go. I missed that. So let's build this. And let's run this. Let me just wait. I have to probably switch to that. Switch to that. Okay, so I hope you guys can see that. So you can see that the ID is 1, the name is Pranav, and the marks is 50, which corresponds to what we saw over here, right? So that's the data we entered. So let's get rid of this. Okay. So now this is what we've done. So I'm going to talk more about what happened, what we just did in future videos. So for now, this is what a class is. A class is a user-defined data type that we can use in our programs. So it gives a template for objects or instances, and all instances or objects follow that blueprint. So we'll see further in the next and upcoming videos.